The Jungle Ghosts, How America's Reluctant Sons Forged a New Kind of Warrior in the Green Hell of Vietnam. November 14, 1965. The Ia Drang Valley, Central Highlands, South Vietnam. Dawn broke not with birdsong or mist-kissed rice paddies, but with the staccato whip-crack of rotor blades slicing through the humid air like judgment from above. UH-1 Huey helicopters, those slender-bellied beasts of burden, painted in olive drab and scarred by salt spray from Pacific crossings, hovered over a ragged clearing dubbed Landing Zone X-ray. Below, the earth was a scarred red tableau. Elephant grass bent like broken fingers, ant hills pocked with craters from probing artillery, and the triple canopy jungle looming like a living shroud, its vines and bamboo thickets hiding 1,000 whispering shadows. Out tumbled the men of Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment, 450 souls in sweat-soaked fatigues, their M16 rifles slung across chests, rucksacks heavy with 70 pounds of ammo, sea rations, and the faint hope of rotation home. These weren't the grizzled GIs of Anzio beachheads or the tank jockeys of the Bulge. They were draftees mostly, 19-year-old everymen plucked from American heartlands by a system that turned selective service notices into one-way tickets to oblivion. Sergeant First Class Jack Smith, no relation to the cigar-chomping general, just a lanky Ohio farm boy with calloused hands from baling hay and a high school diploma framed back in Dayton, hit the dirt first in his squad. At 20, he'd been studying diesel mechanics at a community college when his number came up in the lottery. 142, low enough to dodge deferment dreams. Felt like God himself drew the short straw, he'd later quip in a quiet moment by a VFW bar, his voice gravelly from decades of suppressed smoke. Jack's boots sank into the ochre mud as the Hueys clawed skyward, their downdraft whipping red dust into cyclones that stung eyes and choked throats. No time for orientation. The North Vietnamese Army's 66th Regiment, 2,000 battle-hardened regulars, fresh from Hanoi indoctrination camps, materialized from the undergrowth like phantoms. A K-47 fire chattered from the tree line, green tracers arcing like fireflies drunk on malice. Grenades sailed in lazy parabolas, bursting in geysers of earth and shrapnel that shredded leaves and flesh alike. Jack's fire team, 4 kids from disparate worlds, a black mechanic from Detroit's Motown shadows, a white surfer dropout from Huntington Beach, and a Latino kid from East LA's barrios, huddled behind a termite mound, returning fire in disciplined bursts. "Keep it low, keep it tight," Jack bellowed, his voice cracking over the din, channeling drills from Fort Benning that now felt as quaint as parade ground spit shines. The battle erupted into a cauldron of chaos that would last 3 blood-soaked days, the first major test of American resolve in Vietnam's meat grinder. By nightfall on the 14th, 50 Americans lay dead or dying, their poncho-shrouded forms dotting the LZ like fallen dominoes. Medevac Hueys, rotors thumping like frantic heartbeats, winched the wounded skyward amid a hail of bullets, while B-52 arc light strikes from Guam hammered the surrounding hills, turning jungle into inferno. Jack's squad lost its point man, a quiet Iowan named Tommy Reed, to a sniper's round that punched through his helmet like a hot nail. He just folded, Jack recalled years later, eyes distant over a lukewarm beer. No scream, no drama, just gone. We dragged him back, popped green smoke for the birds, and kept humping. That's when you learn, grief's a luxury for the living. When the dust settled on November 17th, U.S. forces tallied 79 killed, 121 wounded. A butcher's bill that paled against the enemy's 1,000-plus confirmed dead. Their bodies stacked like cordwood for the body count photographers. But victory? A Pyrrhic word in Drang's ledger. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, the steely West Pointer commanding from a shallow crater, wired back to base. "We're out of ammo. The enemy is closing. Send everything you've got." His words captured the raw calculus of survival. Not grand maneuvers, but the desperate alchemy of boys turning terror into tenacity. What unfolded in that valley wasn't merely a clash of arms, it was the forge where America's reluctant sons, draftees thrust into a war without front lines or fanfare, began hammering out a new warrior ethos. Traditional military doctrine, etched in the annals of Gettysburg and Guadalcanal, preached open-field engagements, massed infantry, and the thunder of tanks. Vietnam mocked such certainties, a guerrilla quagmire where the enemy owned the shadows, the monsoons, and the moral high ground of nationalism. Generals like William Westmoreland, with his clipped Virginia drawl and visions of attrition, dismissed the jungle as a temporary nuisance, a theater for search and destroy sweeps that would bleed Hanoi dry. "We will not lose if we stay the course," he proclaimed in early 1965, as troop commitments ballooned from 23,000 advisors to 184,000 combat boots on the ground. Yet the mathematics of victory shifted not in Pentagon war rooms, but in the foxholes of forgotten platoons, where innovations sprouted from desperation like mushrooms after rain. These young grunts, average age 19, the youngest in U.S. history, rewrote the rules, proving that a generation conscripted from soda fountains and drive-ins could birth tactics that echoed through modern battlefields from Fallujah to Kabul. The transformation germinated in the unlikeliest soil, the draft boards of Middle America, where the Selective Service Act of 1967 turned civilian lives into military property with cold efficiency. On December 1, 1969, televisions across the nation flickered to life with the first draft lottery, a spinning acrylic drum of 366 blue capsules bearing dates from January 1st to December 31st, plus leap year. Families huddled in living rooms, breaths held as capsules tumbled like lots from Delphi. Number 1, September 14th, a kid from Spokane, Washington, who'd planned a mechanic's apprenticeship. By war's end, 2.7 million Americans had served in Vietnam, but draftees comprised 1.8 million of them. 2/3 of the force, funneled disproportionately into infantry meat grinders, where 30.4% of combat deaths hailed from their ranks. High school seniors watched classmates' numbers flash low, their futures rerouted from college quads to induction centers. Paul Wisavati, a pool shark teen from Taylorville, Illinois, got his notice in 1966 while hustling 8-ball in Smoky Dives. "I was 19, thought the world was bars and broads," he shared over coffee with old comrades. "Next thing, I'm on a bus to Chicago, shaved bald, yelling cadences with farm boys who smelled like silos. Basic was 8 weeks of hell, push-ups till your arms screamed, gas chamber eyes burning like Satan's piss. But jungle school, a joke. 2 days in Georgia swamps learning to hump the boo with a 50-pound pack. We shipped out thinking we were John Waynes. Arrived knowing we were FNGs, fucking new guys. Training regimens, relics of World War II's assembly line soldier factories, fared poorly against Vietnam's verdant Viper pit. Fort Dix or Benning churned out recruits via the cycle of fire. Endless M14 rifle drills on manicured ranges, bayonet lunges at burlap dummies, and lectures on Soviet blitzkriegs that might as well have been hieroglyphs. Advanced individual training added 4 weeks, swapping the M14 for the M16, a space-age lightweight with banana clip magazines promising 600 rounds per minute. But teething woes abounded. Early models jammed in the humid muck, earning nicknames like Mattel Rifle for their plastic fragility. "We cleaned 'em with toothbrushes and prayers," recalled Steve Allen, a Marine officer from Newman, Illinois, who shipped out in 1970. Instructors screamed controlled pairs, 2 shots assess. But in Nam, you emptied the mag and hoped Charlie blinked first. Of the 58,220 Americans killed in Vietnam, 47,434 in hostile action, nearly 17,725 were draftees. Their inexperience a grim multiplier in ambushes where visibility shrank to whispers. Adaptation hit like monsoon fever. Stateside spit and polish yielded to boonie hats woven from vines, boot polish traded for insect repellent, and foxhole philosophy born in the bush. "Forget lines and maneuvers," one Korean vet drill instructor growled. "In Nam, it's you, your team, and the green. Gooks own the night, you own your guts." Jack Smith's baptism deepened in the Ia Drang's aftermath, as his battalion, battered but unbroken, pushed into the valley's folds. The airmobile revolution, midwifed by the 1st Cavalry Division under Moore's command, shattered old mobility chains. Where World War II doughboys marched 20 miles a day or hitched truck rides over cratered roads, Huey's airlifted platoons into hot LZs in minutes, rotors defying physics to hover amid ground fire. Ia Drang deployed 450 choppers in a ballet of dust and death, ferrying reinforcements across 20 miles of enemy-held turf where roads dissolved into minefields. "We dropped like gods from Olympus," Jack mused, but the landing was Hades. Bullets zipping like hornets, grass parting for grenades. One bird took a round to the tail boom, spun like a top before nosing in. Pilot walked away. Gunner didn't. By battle's end, the tactic had flipped the script. U.S. forces encircled the NVA, artillery walking fire over friendly lines in a deadly waltz that claimed 400 enemy while sparing encircled grunts. Westmoreland hailed it as the dawn of a new era. But soldiers knew the truth. Helicopters weren't saviors. They were enablers for grunts who improvised the rest. Pat Payne, a 1st Cavalry trooper who survived Ia Drang's fury, etched the horror in his memory. LZ X-ray was a killing box, ants swarming over the dead, air thick with cordite and shit. We called in napalm, watched it bloom orange, roasting screams from the trees. Lost my best friend to a B-40 rocket. He was brewing coffee when it hit. Buried him shallow, marked with a dog tag on a stick. That's war, no glory, just ghosts. The valley's toll, 79 dead, a ratio of 1 to 13 against the NVA, fueled the body count obsession, a metric that ballooned US claims to 950,000 enemy dead by 1975, though post-war audits pegged it closer to 444,000, bloated by civilians and duplicates. Yet in the foxholes, innovation flowed from necessity. Grunts daisy-chained claymore mines, Anti-personnel shredders spit in 700 steel balls along trails, turning VC sappers into confetti. M60 machine guns, belt-fed belchers, chewed through ambushes at 550 rounds per minute, their water-cooled barrels swapped for lighter models that overheated like fevers. Jack's team mastered hasty fighting positions, shallow scrapes under logs rigged with tripwires to punji stakes, bamboo spikes dipped in feces. Infection's silent ally. As 1966 unspooled into escalation, troop levels hitting 385,000 by year's end. The jungle's underbelly revealed horrors demanding darker adaptations. The Viet Cong's tunnel networks, sprawling 250 kilometers beneath Cu Chi alone, mocked surface patrols, hospitals, forges and command posts woven from clay and cunning, booby-trapped with grenades tethered to tripwires, venomous bamboo vipers coiled in false floors, and punji pits yawning like graves. Traditional engineers, with their bulldozers and defoliants, bulldozed acres to scant effect. The tunnels regrew like weeds. Enter the tunnel rats, volunteers culled from the ranks, wiry draftees under 5 feet 9 inches and 150 pounds, armed with flashlights, 45 pistols silenced to whispers, and a feral disregard for death. Skinny bastards with more balls than brains, one vet quipped. Specialist 4th-class Carlos Lozada, a Puerto Rican draftee from the Bronx's concrete canyons, embodied the breed during Operation Cedar Falls in January 1967. Drafted at 19 after a stint in auto shops, Carlos shipped out with the 25th Infantry Division, his English laced with Spanglish fire. Back home, tunnels meant subway rats, he joked in a declassified debrief. In Nam, they meant you crawling belly down into black nothing, smelling rot and cordite, praying no spider-hole spits led. On that op, his rat team, 4 shadows with knives and guts, descended into a Cu Chi maze near Saigon. Flashlight beams danced on walls slick with moisture, revealing tripwires like spider silk. A grenade pin clinked free. Carlos dove, the blast singeing his fatigues but claiming no flesh. Heard the gook laugh. Close, too close. Then my 45 barked. Dragged him out by his collar. He was 16, eyes wide like mine at induction. By op's end, Cedar Falls flushed 750 VC, destroyed 1,000 bunkers, but rats like Carlos paid. 10% casualty rate, higher than line infantry. Their intel, captured maps, POWs surfacing like drowned men, severed supply lines, proving small unit daring trumped big unit bluster. Westmoreland, initial skeptic. Green-lit gas pumps and flamethrowers by 1968. But the rat's legacy endured. Urban tunnel tactics in Iraq's sewers, Gaza's labyrinths. The innovations cascaded. Grunts rigged mechanical ambushes, empty C-ration cans filled with nails, swung from vines as flails. Zippo raids, torching hooches with flamethrowers, ferreted documents from ashes, though they birthed refugees and resentment. Medevac times plummeted to 30 minutes via Huey slings, saving limbs where Korea's dust-offs took days. Yet glory's shadow lengthened as Tet, 1968, shattered illusions. On January 30th, 70,000 NVA and VC erupted across 100 targets. Hugh City's Imperial Citadel falling to a dawn coup de main. US Marines, 1st and 3rd Battalions, reclaimed it in 26 days of house-to-house inferno. M16 AS barking through doorways, RPGs cratering walls, civilians caught in crossfires that claimed 5,800. Lance Corporal Joe Bongiovanni, A Marine draftee from Philly's row houses stormed Hugh with Echo Company. Tet hit like thunder, Charlie in ARVN uniforms, AKS chattering from the pagoda. He recounted in a fireside chat. We cleared rooms with frags and hope, kick door, toss Willie Peter smoke, hose the corners. Lost my radio man to a sniper in the Make V compound, bullet through the throat, gurgling prayers. We dragged civilians out, old Mama San's clutching kids, eyes hollow. Camaraderie, that's the glue. Sharing smokes in basements, lying about stateside girls, covering your brother's blind side. Hugh's toll, 216 Marines dead, 1,364 wounded. NVA losses tripled it, but Tet's psychological gut punch, CBS's Walter Cronkite, declaring the war mired in stalemate, eroded homefront will. Peak U.S. strength, 543,000 in 1969, casualties mounting to 304,000 wounded overall. Darkness festered beneath valor. Fragging, GIs grenading officers deemed reckless, spiked from 96 incidents in 1969 to 333 in 1971, claiming 42 lives amid 800 to 1,000 attempts. Drugs dulled the edge. 30% sampled heroin by 1971. Amphetamines fueling all-night watches. My Lai, March 16, 1968. Charlie Company's rampage slaughtered 504 villagers. Women, kids, elders, in a hamlet misidentified as VC Haven. Ron Ridenour, a door gunner from Norfolk, Nebraska, heard whispers in April. They wasted the whole ville, bayoneted babies, gang-raped girls. Still in country, Ron canvassed witnesses, penning a March 1969 letter to Nixon, Congress, Pentagon brass. 30 recipients, demanding probe. I am convinced that the full story of this operation will never be known unless someone forces it out, he wrote. His whistleblowing birthed Pear's commission, Lieutenant Calley's conviction, a moral scalpel excising war's rot. Homecoming scarred deeper than shrapnel. No ticker tape for these ghosts. Greyhound buses disgorged them into jeers. Baby killer, or indifference. Came back to a nation that spat on us, Jack Smith reflected, flew into Travis Air Force Base, changed civvies in a latrine, hitchhiked home. Folks asked, did you win? Like it was a ball game. PTSD ravaged, 500,000 cases, suicides eclipsing combat deaths at 100,000 plus post-war. Agent Orange's dioxin legacy. Cancers, defects in 4.8 million exposed Vietnamese, thousands of vets. Yet resilience bloomed. Vietnam veterans against the war marches, Jan Scruggs Wall, 1982's black granite, etching 58,281 names. Mended fractures. The injustice can't be remedied, one vet quoted, but the memorial reminds, we served, not started, the storm. The Jungle Ghost's legacy. A testament that ordinary suns, forged in green hell, birthed enduring fire. Airmobile assaults doctrinize every force, tunnel rats haunt urban ops. Admiral Zumwalt reflected, they taught us war's true cost, not territory, but souls. Jack, Gray now in Ohio, sums it. We didn't conquer the jungle, it conquered us. But in the breaking, we built unbreakable men. From Ia Drang's dust to the wall's shadow, 2.7 million carried rifles and remade resolve. The proof that even in defeat, human grit endures, whispering, impossible is just uncharted trail. As the monsoons of 1967 drenched the Mekong Delta, turning rice paddies into quagmires of knee-deep muck, the reluctant warriors dug deeper into their reinvention. Operation Junction City, the largest search and destroy sweep to date, mobilized 25,000 troops across War Zone C, a VC stronghold north of Saigon. Tanks and APCS churned the earth, but it was the grunts on foot who peeled back the layers of deception. Private First Class Mike Troyer, drafted from a Pennsylvania steel mill after his deferment for a bad knee expired, humped point for Bravo Company, 173rd Airborne. Steel Town's noise was hammers and sparks, Mike said, reminiscing by a crackling fire. Nam's was whispers and snaps, branches under boots, or worse, booby traps. Junction City. We burned 10,000 acres with Rome plows, those dozer blades on M48 tanks chewing jungle like tin cans. But Charlie just melted away, left us chasing ghosts. Troyer's platoon innovated with people sniffers, chemical detectors rigged to Hueys, sniffing urine traces to track VC trails. What started as a lab curiosity became a grunt's edge. One whiff, and a company air assaulted the source, claymores popping in symphony. Yet the jungle fought back with monsoons that swelled rivers to torrents, washing out fire bases and drowning patrols. Grunts lashed rafts from ammo crates, poling through floods under sniper fire, their M79 thumpers, grenade launchers lobbing 40mm beehives, arcing like prayers into the mist. Casualties mounted, 282 dead in Junction City, but 2,728 VC claimed, a ratio that masked the war's true grind. Attrition not just of bodies, but of will. Women wove into this tapestry of tenacity, not as footnotes, but as lifelines. Army nurses like Lieutenant Sharon Lane, a 25-year-old from Ohio who volunteered for the 312th EVAC hospital in Chu Lai, triaged under rocket fire, her OR-10 to Canvas Cathedral amid screams. They came in shredded, napalm burns bubbling skin, shrapnel nests in guts, she wrote in letters home. I'd stitch a farm boy from Iowa, while mortars walked the wire. He'd wake calling for Mom. We lost 20% on the table, but the ones who made it. They thanked us with dog tags on necklaces. By 1968, 11,000 women served, nurses, clerks, Red Cross donut dollies, handing out coffee and morale in fire bases. Lynette Fromm, a dolly in the Central Highlands, recalled the absurdity. Picnics under Phuket palms, playing Beatles tunes on a phonograph while B-52s thundered overhead. The boys needed normal, cards, jokes, a girl's smile, to remember they weren't machines. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, that serpentine artery snaking through Laos and Cambodia, became the war's elusive spine, a 12,000-mile vein pumping 2 million tons of supplies yearly. Traditional bombing, Operation Rolling Thunder's 864,000 tons, dropped from 1965 to 1968, scarred the earth but barely stemmed the flow. Anti-aircraft guns and decoy trucks laughed at F-4 Phantoms. Grunts on the ground, like door gunner Robin Hayes with the 9th Air Commando Squadron, innovated from the cockpit. Trail watch was roulette, Robin said. We flew tree toppers, low and slow in OV-10 Broncos, spotting truck parks by heat signatures at night. Marked 'em with Willie Pete, then called in Spectres, C-130 gunships circling like vultures, miniguns spitting 6,000 rounds a minute. One run, we lit a convoy, 30 trucks blooming fireballs, secondary blasts lighting the ridge like Christmas. Hayes's squadron pioneered Puff the Magic Dragon, AC-47s retrofitted with 3 7.62mm miniguns, orbiting targets in a lethal carousel, tracers painting the night in red lace. What began as a desperate lash-up evolved into precision. Infrared sensors, laser-guided bombs by 1972. Yet the trail endured, its porters, coolies humping 100-pound loads through leech-infested passes, outlasting steel. Grunts crossing into Laos on secret ops like Dewey Canyon. Two in 1969 patrolled Indian country with silenced Car-15, ambushing mule trains under moonless skies. Felt like Apaches in reverse, one recon Marine whispered. Silent kills, cash grabs, AKs, rice, meds, then ghost out before dawn. Brass called it interdiction, we called it survival. By 1969, as Nixon's Vietnamization shuffled the deck, ARVN taking lead, U.S. drawdown from 543,000 to 265,000, the ghosts adapted to hybrid warfare. Fire bases like Ripcord, besieged in July by 20,000 NVA, became fortresses of ingenuity. Trip flares strung like Christmas lights, listening posts manned by killer teams of snipers and spotters. Specialist Rick Merrick, a draftee from rural Kentucky, manned a .50 caliber on Ripcord's perimeter. NVA probed nightly, sappers with satchel charges, mortars raining like hail, he recalled. We'd hose 'em with red balls from the Mar Deuce, then counter with 105s zeroed on their lines. Lost the hill after 23 days, but bled 'em white. 500 dead for our 75. That's when you realize it's not land, it's the breaking point. The breaking point loomed largest in Khe Sanh, the 1968 siege that echoed Dien Bien Phu. 6,000 Marines hunkered in a rain-lashed plateau, ringed by 20,000 NVA artillery. B-52s carpet-bombed the encirclement, 100,000 tons in 77 days, while C-130s dropped beans and bullets through flak. Corporal Tom Quigley, a Brooklyn kid turned grunt, manned the wire. Meat grinder, trenches knee-deep in mud, eating sea rats cold, listening to sappers tunnel under. We'd pop CS gas, watch 'em choke and bolt. Air support was our god. One arc light run vaporized a hill, dust cloud like atomic, echoes for hours. Siege lifted after 77 days, 205 Marines dead, but 10,000 NVA claimed. A tactical draw that sapped Hanoi's momentum. Intangibles forged the core, the fire team bond, 4 men meshed like gears, point scanning shadows, slack covering flanks, auto rifleman suppressing, grenadier lobbing curveballs. Family in fatigues, Joe Bongiovanni called it, shared everything, fears in whispers, last smoke with the dying. Race lines blurred, black power salutes beside white rebel flags, Chicano lowriders' tails swapped for Appalachian yarns. Yet fractures showed, drug dens in rear bases, bloopers, M79 misfires, as subtle sabotage, short-timers' calendars etched on arms, 365 days to Deros date eligible return from overseas. Withdrawals math was merciless. By 1972, U.S. strength dwindled to 24,000. ARVN crumbling under Easter Offensive's blitz. 14,000 NVA tanks rolling south. Linebacker raids hammered Hanoi with B-52s. 15,000 tons forcing Paris talks. Grunts like Sergeant Elias Ramirez, holding Firebase Bastogne, innovated mad minutes, preemptive barrages at dusk, denying infiltrators. We knew the end coming, Elias said, humped patrols with one eye on Saigon, handing off to ARVN kids greener than us. Felt like midwives to defeat, training them on claymores, then watching them fold. Saigon fell April 30th, 1975. North Vietnamese tanks smashing palace gates, chopper evac from rooftops, in a frantic exodus of 7,000 souls. The ghosts scattered, some to boats, others to bottles, many to shadows. Jack Smith hitchhiked home to Dayton, found his girl married, job shunned. Woke nights with jungle smells, hands choking ghosts, he admitted. Therapy? A VA shrink in '83, groups where vets swapped scars like trading cards. PTSD wasn't a word then, it was just the weight you carried. From ashes rose reinvention. Vietnam Veterans of America, founded 1981 by Bobby Muller, a paraplegic vet raging against indifference, lobbied for benefits. Agent Orange suits netting $180 million. The Wall, Maya Lin's V-shaped gash in D.C. Earth, dedicated 1982. 58,281 names in chronological march, visitors tracing letters with fingers wet from tears. Healing's not forgetting, Jan Scruggs, its midwife, said. It's naming the cost. Legacy rippled global. Airmobile ops birthed Apache raids in Desert Storm, tunnel rats echoed in Mosul's sewers. Doctrine shifted. Counterinsurgency primers cited NAM's small unit ethos, hearts and minds over body counts. Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, Riverine Force commander, reflected in retirement. Those boys taught us war's calculus isn't steel, it's spirit. They broke, but in breaking, showed unbreakable. Jack Smith, 70 now, tends a garden in Ohio, tomatoes ripening like old wounds. Didn't win the maps, he says, handing a vet a beer. Won the man inside, turned soda jerks to sentinels, proving when hell calls, even the called-up answer with fire. The jungle ghosts fade, average age 78 in 2025, but their whisper lingers. In bootprints on memorials, in sons who serve wiser. From Ia Drang's red dirt to Saigon's smoke, 2.7 million humped the green, carrying not conquest, but the proof. Ordinary blood, forged extraordinary, turns quagmire to legend. That is Vietnam's quiet thunder, the revolution of the reluctant, echoing eternal. The year 1970 brought the Cambodian incursion, a thunderclap raid into neutral territory that upended the ghosts' world. Nixon's gambit, 50,000 troops slashing 30 miles into Parrot's Beak, aimed to gut NVA sanctuaries, but birthed Kent State blood. 4 students felled by guard rifles, home front fracturing like glass. Grunt Eddie Lopez, a Chicano draftee from San Anton's barrios, led a platoon into the Fishhook salient. Cambodia was Nam on steroids, thicker bush, meaner Charlie, Eddie growled. We humped triple canopy, machetes hacking vines, air stinking of rot. Found cache heaven, 20,000 tons, AKs stacked like firewood, rockets in hooches. Blew it sky high with C4 daisy chains, secondary blasts lighting the night like fireworks gone wrong. Lopez's company pioneered Eagle flights, rapid Huey insertions on intel pings, snatching documents before NVA regrouped. One snatch netted a colonel's diary, troop dispositions, trail routes, gold that rerouted B-52s. But payback came swift. Ambushes in elephant grass where visibility zeroed and panic reigned. Lost my LT to a sniper, pop, headshot, brains on my boot, Eddie recalled. Took command, called in gunships, Cobras slinging rockets like Zeus's bolts. Pulled us out, but the kids' eyes haunted. Incursions Hall, 11,000 bunkers torched, 30,000 weapons seized. But ARVN's fumble, looting over fighting, sowed doubt. Ghosts rotated home bitter, whispering of the big lie. Lam Son 719, ARVN's 1971 Laos thrust tested Vietnamization's mettle. U.S. advisors like Major Hank Zeller embedded with 20,000 South Vietnamese, watched from shadows. We trained them on fire team drills, Claymore sits, Hank said. But when NVA hit with T-54 tanks, ARVN broke, trucks jammed on Highway 9, soldiers ditching rifles for heels. Zeller's team airlifted ammo under fire, CH-47 Chinooks dancing through SAMS. One bird took a 37mm round, tail rotor shredded, auto-rotated into trees. Pulled survivors, but lost the load, 10 tons gone. Op collapsed in rout, 3,000 ARVN dead, US helos shredded. But ghosts gleaned lessons. Logistics trumped valor. Advisors' whispers outlasted orders. The Phoenix program, CIA's scalpel to VC shadow government, drew grunts into grey ops. Provincial recon units, Kit Carson scouts, ex-VC turned assets, paired with US teams for night hunts. Sergeant Lee Harlan, Delta Force precursor, ran PRUS in the Delta. Village intel led us to safe houses, crawl under stilt huts, zip-tie the cadre, Lee confided. One night, nabbed a regimental ghost. He sang trail maps for a smoke. Brutal. Yeah, but it snipped the Hydra's heads, 26,000 neutralized by 72. Critics cried assassination, ghosts called it necessity. A dirty stitch in counterinsurgency's seam. Monsoons masked deeper woes. Malaria felled more than bullets, 500,000 cases yearly, while black market rackets siphoned supplies. Grunts bartered PX cigarettes for black label scotch. ARVN colonels fencing US jeeps. Yet humor endured. Gook jokes over poncho liners, booby-trap pranks with dud grenades. Kept us sane, Mike Troyer laughed. Like naming leeches after brass. Westmoreland, the fat one sucking your thigh. By 1972, Easter offensive's armored blitz, 90,000 NVA, 1,200 tanks, shattered ARVN lines, Hugh falling in days. Linebacker I hammered the North, 29,000 tons, dikes breached, Hanoi blacked out. Grunt Tom Riley, 101st Airborne, held Firebase Birmingham. Tanks rumbling like thunder, 130mm shells cratering our wire. We called Puff, a C-119S circling, Gatlings hosing lead rain, stopped a column cold, hulls smoking at dawn. US advisors embedded, whispering fire missions, turned tide, ARVN rallied at Anlock, B-52s plastering assaults. Offensive bled NVA white, 45,000 dead. But exposed fragility. Paris Accords, January 1973. Ceasefire ink dried as US exited, 23,700 ghosts remaining for POW swaps. Last convoy out, March 29th. Saigon streets thronged, kids waving flags. Sergeant Elias Ramirez, last off Tan Son Nut, pocketed a hoochmaid's note, "Come back, GI, peace." He didn't. Peace was exile, post-war forged tempered survivors. Jack Smith founded a Dayton VFW post, teaching mechanics to vets. Hands dirty, minds mending. Carlos Lozada, tunnel rat legend, lobbied Congress for benefits, his Bronx fire unquenched. We crawled hell for freedom, he'd thunder, don't let bureaucracy bury us. Agent Orange class action, 1984, $15 million yearly, but dioxin's toll, 20,000 vet cancers, lingered like ghosts. The wall's vigil endures, dawn taps echoing names, vets in faded fatigues tracing letters. Maya Lin's design, simple slash in earth, mirrors the scar. 58,281 etched, from PFC James Anderson Jr., first black medal, to Lieutenant Don Corley, last KIA. It's mirror for the soul, a pilgrim vet said. See your face beside the fallen, reminds we all walked the green. Decades on, echoes resound. Gulf War's heliborne assaults trace Huey bloodlines. Afghanistan's cave hunts nod to Ku Chai. Doctrine manuals cite NAM. Adapt or perish. Small teams, local intel, win hearts post-bayonets. Bobby Muller, wheelchair-bound, founded VVA's anti-landmine crusade, netting Nobel nods. War took my legs, he grinned, but not my fight. In Ohio twilight, Jack Smith plants flags Memorial Day, grandchildren listening wide-eyed. Jungle taught limits, he says soft, and beyond. Boys like us, draftees, dreamers, proved grit outlasts guns, didn't claim victory, claimed ourselves. The jungle ghosts, spectral now, patrol memories' trails. From Ia Drang's roar to Saigon's sigh, their saga whispers eternal, reluctant suns, revolutionary fire, turning hell's green to gold's unyielding gleam.